Picture this. March 15th, 96 AD, a 13-year-old boy named Marcus Lucius stands barefoot on cold marble in the atrium of a Roman villa just outside the city walls. The morning light filters through the compluvium above, casting shadows that seem to reach for him like grasping fingers. He's been a slave in this household for 2 years now, ever since his father's farm collapsed under debt and the tax collectors came with their ledgers and chains. Marcus wears a simple white tunic that's been freshly laundered, and his dark hair has been oiled until it gleams, styled in a way that makes him look younger than his years. Something feels wrong today. The other household slaves move with unusual haste, their eyes sliding away from his whenever he tries to catch their gaze. From the kitchens comes the rich aroma of roasted peacock and honeyed wine, preparations for a feast that seems far too elaborate for an ordinary morning. The steward has been checking on him repeatedly, adjusting his tunic, inspecting his hands for dirt, treating him with a careful attention that feels more like a butcher preparing meat than a master caring for a servant. What Marcus doesn't know is that 3 days ago, his name was written on papyrus and placed in a silver bowl on his master's desk. What he doesn't know is that the visitors who will arrive this afternoon are not here for business negotiations or social pleasantries. They are here to inspect their purchase. In his belt, Marcus touches the small wooden horse his father carved for him before the sale, before the chains, before everything changed. He's kept it hidden for 2 years, a secret connection to the boy he used to be, to the life where he had a name that meant something beyond property. Tonight, they will find that wooden horse and burn it before his eyes. The first step in erasing every trace of who Marcus Lucius once was. By dawn tomorrow, he will understand what the older slaves meant when they whispered in the dark that some fates make death look like mercy. This was the reality for an estimated 800,000 young men across the Roman Empire over 6 centuries of conquest and decadence. Boys like Marcus fed into a machine of exploitation that operated behind marble columns and silk curtains, protected by laws that treated them as objects and enabled by a society that saw nothing wrong with treating children as commodities. The system that would destroy Marcus wasn't the cruelty of one twisted individual. It was institutional design, a network of abuse that stretched from Britain to Egypt, from the Rhine to the Euphrates, turning innocence into currency for Rome's elite pleasure. Before we dive deeper into these forgotten stories of suffering and survival, if you find yourself drawn to the hidden truths of history, the stories that don't make it into the textbooks, consider hitting that subscribe button. These stories deserve to be remembered, and your support helps ensure they're never forgotten again. The Roman Empire at its height controlled over 5 million square kilometers and ruled 60 million people. Behind its architectural marvels and engineering genius lay a foundation built on human suffering so systematic it might as well have been another feat of Roman engineering. Conservative historical estimates suggest that throughout the empire's long history, over 800,000 young men served as concubines, their lives consumed by a system that treated human beings as renewable resources. This wasn't hidden or shameful by Roman standards. Wealthy citizens openly competed to acquire the most beautiful young men, displaying them at dinner parties like living sculptures, proof of their refined taste and unlimited resources. The finest specimens commanded prices equivalent to an entire year's wages for a skilled craftsman. A particularly prized boy from Greece or Egypt might cost more than a small villa. His value determined by a catalogue of physical attributes that reduced human worth to measurements and aesthetic judgments. The true horror lay in how systematic and efficient the trade became. Across the empire, specialized markets operated with commercial precision that would impress any modern business analyst. In Rome's Forum Boarium near the cattle market, young men were displayed on raised wooden platforms while potential buyers examined their teeth like horses, tested their reflexes, evaluated their potential for various forms of service. Sellers maintained detailed records of each boy's origin, age, previous training, and special qualities, treating human inventory with the same meticulous attention given to livestock or luxury goods. The economic incentives reached into every corner of Roman society like roots seeking water. Poor families facing starvation could sell their sons for immediate payment, often convincing themselves they were giving their children opportunities for advancement in wealthy households. Raiders and pirates operating across the Mediterranean knew that young male captives commanded premium prices, making them priority targets during coastal raids and military campaigns. Even legitimate merchants supplemented their income by identifying promising boys in distant provinces and arranging their transport to urban markets, where demand never seemed to diminish. What made the Roman system particularly devastating was its integration with the empire's legal structures. Unlike common slaves who retained some basic protections under Roman law, male concubines occupied a gray area where their master's desires took absolute precedence over any consideration of welfare or dignity. They could not seek help from authorities who would simply return them to their owners. They could not form relationships with others without permission. They could not own property, make decisions about their own bodies, or even speak without being commanded to do so. Their entire existence was defined by their utility to their owners, and when that utility ended, so did any reason to keep them alive. The training process that transformed free boys into compliant concubines was as systematic as any military operation. Specialized facilities operated throughout the empire. each developing techniques for breaking down resistance while maintaining physical attractiveness. These institutions understood human psychology with disturbing precision, identifying the most effective methods for destroying individual will without leaving visible scars that might reduce market value. Marcus learned all of this not through explanation but through experience. The buyers who came that afternoon in 96 AD were not purchasing him for one household. They were a consortium, 3 wealthy Romans who shared ownership of particularly expensive acquisitions, maintaining a private facility outside the city where they kept their collection. The price they negotiated was higher than Marcus had ever heard for a human being, a sum that represented his complete transformation from person to luxury commodity. By sunset he was chained in a covered wagon alongside 3 other boys, rolling toward a life where every day would be worse than the last, where survival meant becoming someone else entirely, where the boy who once carved wooden toys with his father would cease to exist in every way that mattered. The facility they reached after dark was part fortress, part palace, designed for maximum security wrapped in luxury. High walls topped with iron spikes surrounded gardens that would have been beautiful if they were prison yards. And inside those walls, Marcus would spend the next 3 years learning that the human spirit can be broken as systematically as any other material, that innocence can be stolen with the same efficiency Rome brought to building roads and aqueducts. The stories of boys like Marcus deserve to be told, not to sensationalize suffering but to remember that behind every great empire's glory lies a foundation of bones and broken lives. Drop a comment below and let me know what historical truth you think deserves more attention. Sometimes the darkest chapters teach us the most important lessons about the price of unchecked power.